This is the story of Lily Marie Bowen. Lily is a Mariposa supermutant turned Nightkin. As we learned in my last video on Jacobstown, the Nightkin are a specific subset of supermutants who are addicted to the use of stealth boys. The stealth boys turn them invisible, and prolonged exposure to the radiation field generated by the stealth boys turns the Nightkin insane. They prefer to be invisible, they don't like being seen, and having spent so many years behind a stealth field has changed their skin to a purplish blue color. Lily becomes our companion while completing the quests in Jacobstown, but after we're done, she follows us off into the wasteland. During this time, we can get to know our new companion a little better. Like all Nightkin, she suffers from schizophrenia. It's therefore hard to have a normal conversation with her. Much of her story only comes out during battle. So to tell her story, we will be exploring two minor locations in the game that we otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to explore. These locations aren't tied to any quests, and they have little lore. We'll explore the Ruby Hill Mine near Jacobstown, and we'll get the rest of Lily's story while exploring Zaps' neon signs near Vault 3. We find a small road to the Ruby Hill Mine just off the 157 to Jacobstown. Just outside the door to the mine, we find a hollowed-out rock with a small amount of ammunition inside. The mine is pretty dark, so using a little bit of cat eye, we can creep on in. Here we see some lake lurks. And before we can do anything, Lily charges. We see some stairs to the right. Let's make sure there are no more lake lurks before exploring. Heading on up the stairs, we do see a few more lake lurks. And it's just after this battle that Lily reveals something about herself.
There's my alarm. Time to take my pills.
Take her pills? Is she on some sort of medication? After hearing her say this, a new dialogue option appears in her dialogue tree. Lily, I have some questions to ask you.
Such a curious little munchkin, aren't you? What do you want to know?
Tell me more about yourself.
Oh, someone wants to hear Grandma's stories. What would you like to hear, Pumpkin?
I heard you mention pills earlier. What kind of medicine are you taking?
Dr. Henry calls them antipsychotics. I don't know what they're supposed to do. They just make my memory fuzzy.
And that's all she tells us. Maybe we'll learn more of her story as we continue to explore. So Dr. Henry, whom we met at Jacobstown, has her on some antipsychotics. Perhaps this is why she's one of the few Nightkin we meet who isn't constantly complaining about being seen, who doesn't appear to be afraid to walk out in the sun. Back on the ground floor of this vaulted cave room, we see one more lake lurk in the distance, and as Lily gets prepared to attack, she says,
Leo, time for chocolate.
Did she say, Leo? After we hear her say this, another option appears in her dialogue tree. We can say, Lily, who's Leo?
Leo is a very bad man, Pumpkin. Yes, you are, Leo. Don't try to deny it. He tells me to do things, terrible things, and sometimes the medicine isn't enough to keep him quiet.
So Leo's just a voice you hear in your head?
You shouldn't say things like that where Leo can hear you, dearie. He doesn't like it.
Oh, so like Tabitha before her, Lily has invented an invisible friend. She's schizophrenic. We could try to convince her that Leo isn't there by saying, but there's no one there.
Well, of course there is, dearie. How else could I hear him tell me who to chop?
And that's all she says for now. To leave this room, we go through a tunnel lit by a bunch of glowing fungus, and at the very bottom, we find a few more lake lurks. On the ground near to where these lake lurks stood is a dead female jackal gang member. On her corpse is the Ruby Hill key, an assortment of ammunition and chems, and the unique fist weapon, Pushy. Pushy is one of the few unique displacer gloves in the game. This one looks dark gray with a brown glove. It only has 60 damage, making it weaker than both the two-step goodbye from Gunrunner's Arsenal and the Ballistic Fist. However, it's significantly faster than both of those weapons and most other displacer gloves, doing 1.47 attacks per second. This brings its DPS up to 88.4, more than any other displacer glove, and giving it a higher DPS than any other fist weapon in the base game. It is only outclassed by the Industrial Hand from the Lonesome Road DLC. It's quite a powerful weapon to find in such a small place that's easy to miss. Since we've stopped for a quick break, we can take a moment to see if Lily has anything more to say. We can ask her where she came from.
I grew up in Vault 17. I never even saw the sun until I was 75 years old. That was when super mutants raided the vault and carried a lot of us off. Yes, Leo, I'm getting to that part. They made me one of them, and they put me to work in an army that was going to conquer California.
You were a soldier?
A spy. Sometimes an assassin. I killed a lot of folks for the Master. Yes, Leo, you helped too.
Who was the Master?
Oh, he was a nasty man, dearie. You don't want to know about him. He was the one who made that super mutant army I told you about.
What happened then?
That wicked old Master got what was coming to him, that's what. After his cathedral blew up, I decided it was high time to go home.
With this, she refers to the success of the Vault Dweller defeating the Master at the end of Fallout 1. She says that she was from Vault 17, but we don't see Vault 17 in any of the games. It's only referenced here by Lily. But we can presume that it was in California, since that's where the Master was, and he created his super mutant army by pillaging the local vaults, dipping their residents in FEV, and turning them into super mutants. Since this is the only reference to Vault 17 in the entire game, no one knows what the Vault's experiment was. In order to not release any spoilers for Fallout 4, Bethesda used Vault 17 for all of the Vault suits that they produced during the concept art phase. Despite her schizophrenia, Lily has brief moments of clarity, usually triggered by things going on around her. This is true when we go and visit vaults. Sometimes while exploring vaults, Lily will remember something from her past in Vault 17.
My. This reminds me of when I was a girl. Right over there would have been where your grandpa and I had our first kiss.
Now, Lily has a unique weapon. She has what appears to be a propeller blade from a Vertibird outfitted into a sword. Now, in my game, I replaced her weapon with Oh Baby, which we found in the caves just above Jacobstown, but we can ask her where she found her sword.
This old thing? Oh, I scavenged it off a wreck in Klamath. Leo showed me how to make it all ready for chopping. Didn't you, Leo?
This is a reference to Fallout 2. In Fallout 2, we can explore a place called Klamath Canyon. And in the canyon, we find a very large wrecked Vertibird. This Vertibird was piloted by the Enclave, but we actually learn more about this crashed Vertibird when we head on over to Novak. There we find an old cowgirl named Daisy Whitman.
Your travels been going all right?
During the course of our conversation, we learned that she was a pilot.
Vertibird pilot. 71 missions and only lost one chopper. Rotor malfunction over Klamath. Hard landing, but I walked away.
This, of course, is the same Vertibird that we find in Fallout 2 that Lily salvaged a propeller blade from to make her sword. Daisy is a bit guarded about her time flying for the Enclave. If we ask her if she flew for the NCR, she says,
4? No, not exactly. It was a long time ago. Things are a lot different these days, and those days are way behind me.
She probably doesn't want to admit that she was at one time part of the Enclave. Now we can ask her the best way we can use her skills.
Isn't that sweet of you to fret about me? Such a good girl. I can always help you stay hidden from the bad people, so you won't get in trouble. I don't mind fighting, especially to protect you, dearie, but I don't like guns. Give me a good chopper, and Leo and I will go right to work. Yeah!
She is very powerful in combat. However, she can be a little frustrating to play with for those who like to use ranged weapons. She tends to turn on her stealth boy and charge into combat, making it easy to harm her due to friendly fire. Otherwise, she's a great companion for a melee character. To complete exploring this mine, we can walk across some boards to a little island. Here we find 3 stacks of explosive crates, one of which was locked, but we can open this with the Ruby Hill key that we found on the corpse earlier. And then putting on a rebreather, we can hop into the water. There's a lot to see down here, including a poker game going on between skeletons. It looks like they were in the middle of playing the game of blackjack when this cave flooded, drowning them where they sat. Next to this scene, we find the body of a super mutant brute, and on his body is a multiplas rifle, which is a very powerful energy weapon, which is a bit rare, but we can find it in some shops, and I've found them on legionaries. At length, we find a hole in the wall that leads out, but as we swim out, we get rushed by a lake lurk. Since it's impossible to attack underwater, we can swim back up on top of the little island to attack the lake lurk. When done, we can hop back down and swim through the hole, which leads to a tunnel that we can follow all the way to that one ledge that we saw earlier overlooking the first large room. We can then head on out the way we came in. Next, I wanted to explore Zaps' neon signs near Vault 3. So heading on over, we of course get attacked by a slew of fiends, and Lily has a heyday. Because she's so aggressive, and she leaps right into the middle of combat, she became a prime target for all of these fiends. Poor Lily was attacked by half a dozen of these guys, wielding very powerful energy weapons. It's also possible that I hit her a bit with friendly fire, since she was stealthed and right next to these guys. And if Lily takes too much damage, we get the following message. Lily has suffered a psychotic break. She will remain in an aggressive state and will not respond to your commands until the break ends. This psychotic break triggers when Lily's health reaches 25%. She'll stay in this psychotic break until we've been outside of combat for quite some time. During this psychotic break, we can't talk with her, trade with her. She becomes incredibly aggressive and she hits harder. We know that her psychotic break ends when, after a while, we hear her say,
That was a bad one, wasn't it, Leo?
It's then that we can talk with her about it, and we find a new option in her dialogue tree. We can say, "What happened in that fight back there?"
Oh, Pumpkin, Grandma's sorry about that. Sometimes she gets mad and listens to Leo when she really shouldn't. The medicine is supposed to help with that, but sometimes Grandma doesn't take it.
Why don't you take your medicine?
Sometimes it makes Grandma forget things she doesn't want to forget, Pumpkin.
So Dr. Henry prescribed her some antipsychotic medication, but she doesn't take it all the time because it makes her forget something. Something she doesn't want to forget. Well, perhaps we can learn what it is if we continue on our way. Nearby, we find a door that leads to Zaps' neon signs. Inside, we find ourselves in an office space, and in one of the cubicles, we find a terminal, but this is a booby-trapped terminal, and sadly, my explosive skill is not high enough to disarm it, so I'm just gonna let this be. In the waiting room, we see some books and a couple of magazines. And while I was exploring one of the bathrooms, looting a first aid kit, Lily went and got herself in some trouble. I turned around to find a fiend charge me. What was that? What exactly happened? Turning the corner and heading downstairs, we see Lily finish off a fiend. And down here at the very bottom, we find 4 fiend corpses. How did this happen? Did Lily kill all of them? Well, I wanted to know exactly what happened here, so reloading a previous save, turns out there was a tripwire at the top of the stairs, right next to an explosive fire hydrant. At the bottom of the stairs are 3 frag mines, positioned right next to another explosive fire extinguisher. Going through the door, we see exactly what happened. The fiends heard Lily and I stomping around upstairs and rushed in to figure out what was going on. There they tripped the mines and the fire extinguisher. After killing all of the fiends at the bottom, we see one more shooting at us from atop a catwalk. After killing him, we can go up where we trip yet another mine. Kill one more fiend. And we find the body of Duke. He doesn't have any lore, but we do get some chems and a service rifle. At the very top, we find a room. This is the foreman's office. In one of the gun cabinets, we find a bumper sword, which is a sword made out of a car's bumper. Potentially a great weapon for Lily. Near to the main desk, we find an open safe with a 9mm submachine gun and some ammunition inside, an ammo container and a grenade box nearby. And after looting a few more containers, we can read the terminal. It's locked with an easy lock. After hacking it, we see 2 shipping invoices and an accident report. We see something confusing. The terminal says McMurray's Neon Sign Designs, but the zone is called Zaps Neon Signs. Perhaps McMurray was just the name of the factory foreman who owned this terminal. In the first shipping invoice, we see that they were making a sign for the building and garden supplies. The contact was Scott Everett, and Zaps was making 3 signs for the guy. The description reads, a single-sided sign, red and white colors, sans serif typeface, top line reads, Everett's. On a red background, large typeface. Lines 2 and 3 read, building and garden. On a white background, medium typeface, all caps. Line 4 reads, supplies. On a red background, small typeface, all caps. And the next one, this was for a company called Kingman's Barbecue. Contact, Felix Weaver. They ordered 4 of these signs, and the description reads, double-sided sign, black, brown, and white colors, sans serif typeface. Top line reads, Kingman's, on a black background, small typeface, all caps. Vertically below reads, barbecue, on a brown background, large typeface, all caps, with a white arrow border. And the last one is an accident report log. Incident, broken glass. Kevin dropped one of the glass tubes today while forming it. He ended up with a nasty cut on his hand from the broken glass. Fortunately, no one else was hurt. I bandaged his hand and had him clean it up before sending him home. One more accident like that and I may have to let him go. Kid's too accident prone. The next one, incident, elevator. One of the elevators to the upper loading dock broke down again. Unfortunately, Jonathan was inside waiting to unload, and the sudden stop caused one of the signs to slip off its pallet, and it broke his leg. He'll be out for at least a month while it heals. This poor company, losing all of their employees, making it hard to conduct business. Nearby, we see 2 shelves with an assortment of goods. Notably, on the bottom, we find 2 magazines. And after looting a first aid kit, we can head back down the staircase to explore the ground floor. Here we find some sort of pumping machine, and then quite a few workbenches covered in an assortment of scrap and junk. We see 2 more workbenches, these made from short girders. And then we can head up a ramp to find the loading bay. Here we see a couple of signs, we can loot some ammo crates, and hey, lo and behold, there's that first sign we saw described in the terminal. Everett's Building Garden Supplies. And it has all the same colors. Well, I suppose it's no wonder why we find this sign here. It was likely one of the last ones they made before the bombs dropped, which is why we still see the invoices on the computers. Now, there is a mattress here on the ground. It was a pretty tricky fight, that. So, we can use the mattress to take a nap to heal on up. As soon as we wake up...
Grandma's here! Grandma's here!
Yay! Oh my goodness, look at these little angels. Becky, that dress looks so lovely. And Jimmy, oh my word, how you've grown.
I'm 4 whole feet, Grandma. Did you bring us presents, Grandma?
Well, now, I don't know. Have you been good to your mommy and daddy?
Yes!
Well then, let Grandma see what you've got.
What on earth was that? We can take Lily aside to figure out what the heck just happened.
Hello again, dear.
What was that recording you were listening to?
Oh, that old thing. That's just a holotape from the last time I visited my grandkids. Such sweet little children. You know, little angels. Sometimes it's hard to remember them. So I take that old tape out from time to time and listen.
Oh, why is it hard to remember them?
It's my medicine, dearie. It keeps me calm, but it makes my memory go all fuzzy. That's why I only take my dosage every other time. That way, at least I remember their faces.
Oh, that's so sad. She has this one recording that somehow she saved from her time in Vault 17. It stayed with her all these years while serving as a super mutant in the Master's army while traveling with Tabitha to Black Mountain. This explains why the first time we meet her in Jacobstown, she greets us as if we were her grandson Jimmy.
Jimmy? Little Jimmy? My, how you're grown up. So good of you to come visit your grandma.
Who's Jimmy?
Oh, Jimmy, don't you go being silly now. Come over here and give your grandma some sugar.
I think you may have me confused with someone else.
Of course I have, dearie. How silly of me. I didn't take my medicine yet today.
Her schizophrenia is confusing her. The memories of her past life and the present get muddled sometimes. It's possible that at one time Obsidian may have had plans to include visions of her time in Vault 17 as a flashback. Because in the game files, we find some hidden developer-only rooms that the developers used to do bug tests. If we use console commands to explore one of those rooms, we find 3 Vault Dwellers, 2 children, 1 Jimmy, 1 Becky, and 1 adult named Lily. This must be what Lily looked like while she lived in Vault 17 with her grandchildren before the Master kidnapped her. Whatever happened to her grandchildren? Either the Master killed them because they were children and were no use to him, or he dunked them in the vat too and turned them into super mutants as well. Her psychosis is bad. Without the medication, she could become just as dangerous as any other Nightkin. Even with the medication, she still appears to be divorced from reality. For example, if we go to Novak and she sees Dinky the dinosaur...
Ooh, look, Pumpkin, a dinosaur. Do you want to ride the dinosaur?
She's not there enough to recognize that this dinosaur is not real. Imagine what would happen to her if she stopped taking her medication altogether. She would become Leo. She knows Leo, and she doesn't want to become Leo. She describes Leo as a very bad man. And so she takes her medication, but this medication, while making her sane, fades her memory. This memory of her grandchildren that's so precious to her. These grandchildren that have been dead for over 100 years, this holotape is all she has to remember them by. And even though she doesn't want to become Leo, and even though she knows the risks, she still chooses to take her medication in half doses, just so that she doesn't lose the memory of their faces. Now, Lily has been traveling with us for quite some time. We're now a trusted friend and companion. We have a lot of influence with her. Once we learn that she's taking her medication in half doses, we can encourage her to make one of 3 choices. The next time we talk with her, we can say, "Lily, I'd like to talk with you about your medication."
Oh, don't you worry your silly little head about that, Pumpkin. Grandma knows what she's doing.
Our first choice is to say, "It's too dangerous for you to miss doses. From now on, I want you to take your medication every time."
Are you sure, dearie? Taking my medicine all the time makes me feel woozy, but it does make it easier for me to ignore Leo.
I'm sure. I'd rather you didn't have any psychotic breaks, even if it means you aren't as strong.
Well, all right then, dearie. I suppose I'll have my holotapes to remind me of Becky and Jimmy.
If we choose this option, her melee weapon skill is set to 60, and at the end of the game, we learn the following.
Encouraged by the courier to take her medication regularly, Lily's mind eventually attained a semblance of clarity. Her memories dulled by the pills, she cast aside the recording of her grandchildren, no longer remembering its significance.
The second choice is to say, "That medicine isn't doing you any good. I want you to stop taking it altogether."
Oh, my stars. Are you sure? If I don't take any medicine at all, Leo gets especially cranky. I can't stop him when he's like that.
I'll risk you having more psychotic breaks if it means you're more dangerous in combat.
All right, dear, if you're really sure.
If we choose this option, Lily will fly into a psychotic rage when her health reaches 50% instead of 25%. Her stats increase and her melee weapon skill is set to a whopping 100. And we get the following ending.
Encouraged by the courier to stop taking her medication altogether, Lily's instabilities grew worse with each passing day. Eventually, she became little more than a ravening beast, the kindly old grandmother subsumed beneath the rage.
Our final choice is to say, you should keep taking your meds every other time. It's worth the risk to remember your family.
That's sweet of you, dearie. I'll try to be better about controlling myself if I see you try to sneak away.
We have one final opportunity to change our minds, or we can say that's good. Do that.
All right, Pumpkin.
If we choose this option, she still throws herself into a psychotic rage when her life reaches 25%. But we can force her to break off combat simply by crouching and sneaking. This gives us a little bit more control over her rage, and if we choose this option, we get the following ending.
Lily continued to take her medicine at half doses, and although she remembered her grandchildren, her mind remained muddled and confused. Eventually, she parted ways with the courier and traveled west, seeking the remnants of her past.
With that, we finish exploring Zapp's neon signs. Heading out the front door, if we turn right, we see the second sign that we saw in that invoice. Kingman's BBQ, complete with the same color scheme and the arrow. Zaps was quite a prolific company, and they must have had a lot of signs done that were pending delivery when the bombs dropped. Over the past 200 years, raiders have built walls with the discarded neon signs that this one business created. They must have had quite a marketing strategy. We see the remnants of statues lingering around, a foot here, a pillar there. Zaps must have used these statues to attract the attention of people as they drove by on the way to Vegas. Lily's story is a personal tragedy, one of many caused by the Master in his quest to unify the wasteland. In his quest for intellectual purity, the Master didn't care about the lives he destroyed, the children he murdered, the memories he blotted out to achieve his dream. How many great villains in the Fallout franchise have acted exactly the same way? Villains who don't care about the people they enslave to rebuild a city. Villains who don't care about the farms they destroy to feed their troops. Villains who don't care how many families they shatter in order to conduct their experiments. There are many villains like the Master, and they share a common attribute. They know best. They know what's good for the people of the wasteland. All life is expendable as long as they attain their goal. Lily's story paints just how tragic the result of that philosophy can be. She presumably lived a happy life in Vault 17. We don't know what the experiment was, but at least it hadn't killed everyone by the time the Master arrived. Lily loved Jimmy and Becky, and the Master took them from her because their lives were inconsequential. His dream was more important. Which of the three choices we have is the best for Lily? I think one of the options is clearly selfish. If we tell her to stop taking her medication, really the only one who benefits is the courier. He takes advantage of her significantly better battle prowess. But Lily loses her memories. She loses her self-control. She loses her mind. Lily doesn't benefit. But I think there are compelling arguments for choosing either of the other two. If we encourage her to take her medication, we do so because we're concerned about Lily. We care about Lily. It must be awful for Lily to lose self-control the way she does, and by taking her medication, we can spare her that agony. And the memories are not that big a deal. Those people no longer live. Her grandchildren have been dead for a long time. You know, at some point, you just gotta move on. Clinging to memories of the past can just be painful. It can stunt your growth as a human being. It can keep you where you were instead of allowing you to blossom and to become something new. And yet, what are we saying? We're essentially saying that we know what's best for Lily. And it's the same kind of mistake that the Master made. He knows what's best for the wasteland, so Lily was expendable. Lily's grandchildren were expendable. We're essentially doing exactly what the Master did. We're willing to obliterate the universe's last memory of those two children, Jimmy and Becky. There is no one left on this planet who thinks about Jimmy or Becky, cares about them in any way, but this one super mutant Nightkin. This one being still treasures them. This one being still listens to their voices just to calm down. And we're willing to completely blot that out, to have Lily forget that they even existed just because we know best. When given the freedom to choose for herself, Lily chooses to take her medication in half doses because the memory of her grandchildren is worth it. That's why in my game I chose to let Lily make the decision. It's Lily's medication, it's her mind, they're her memories, they were her grandchildren. It's up to Lily to decide if the risk was worth it. I am saddened by all 3 of the endings we get with Lily. I wish there was an ending where we see her sanity return, but also some of her memories, so that she could remember more about her grandchildren and possibly her children too. But I suppose these limited options are a little bit more realistic. We don't always get what we had hoped for in life, and I suppose that's why the ending I hoped for didn't even exist. But what are your thoughts on Lily and the grandchildren that were so precious to her? Which of Lily's 3 endings did you choose, and what are your reasons for doing so? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments section below. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, folks. Thanks, killer. That's right, it's everyone's favorite psychopath from Fallout 4, Pikmin, with a copy of his handwritten note on the front and a portrait of the man painting one of his masterpieces on the back. You can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can get the shirt by clicking here. Thanks for watching, folks. I publish a new Fallout video 6 days a week on a wide range of topics spanning all of the games. I take Sundays off, so I'm not going to have a video for you tomorrow, but if you want to make sure that you don't miss what I have for you Tuesday morning, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you bright and early Tuesday morning with a brand new video.